Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Views on News. Any aggression against either shall be considered aggression against both. The core clause of Saudi-Pakistan Mutual Defence Pact. We'll be talking about what this means as far as regional security is concerned, what this means as far as, of course, Pakistan's gains are concerned at this time, as far as our relationship with our regional partners are concerned. Is this a strategic shift? What is this signaling? All of those are important questions we'll be talking about today. I have with me Nasir Ali Khan, who's a former ambassador. Thanks for being with us today. We also have with us Lt.Gen. Raza Muhammad Khan, who is a defense analyst, also former President NDU, and will be joined by other guests during the course of the program. Ambassador, in your opinion, does this is it about a strategic shift in regional security as you see this agreement? First of all, I want to, of course, start off with talking about the clause itself and what it means for Pakistan and Saudi Arabia, because of course it's a broad enveloping clause in terms of how, the security implications for both Pakistan and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia.
First of all, I'd like to point out what is it that we're facing exactly. Israel is not only a rogue nation that flouts international laws, that actually breaks them with impunity, does not respect the ICJ or the ICC. And now lately it is quite clear that it aspires to be a regional hegemon. So what Israel is now trying to do is to try and achieve that dream of greater Israel, a piece of paper or a map that Netanyahu seems to carry around with him. Now, up to this point, as far as Gaza and the genocide are concerned, in the recent past, Pakistan has spoken up very strongly against it. And you must have seen the speech that our UN permanent representative made in reply to Israel's speech in the Security Council, in which he tried to involve Pakistan in this conflict. But I think amongst all these countries, today at least, Pakistan is the one country that speaks very strongly, not only against the genocide, but against the recent attack in Qatar. Now, the other thing we need to realize,
I want to come to all of that, but I also, want your quick opinion on how you see this in terms of the security implications for both Pakistan and Saudi Arabia. Because of course, it's a blanket clause when we look at this clause, and it seems to cover nearly everything with regard to deterrence, also with regard to the future of the security implications for both.
In theory, it can be an all-encompassing kind of agreement, but the details right now are not available to us. However, the relationship and security alliance has in a sense been around for the last 4 decades. We still have, before this agreement, we had advisors that were still stationed there. There was a point where we had a whole brigade there. We have been training them and doing all these things. Now, what is it that I feel would be in the first stages? I think that would involve training and perhaps joint exercises.
So you're saying that in a sense, it formalizes the collaboration that was already at play for a long time?
Well, I think it is a new development, because it is now very clear from both sides that they want to do something concrete, something tangible about it.
On that note, I have with me Lt.Gen. Raza Khan. Gen Sahab, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Gen Sahab, we're talking about the implications of this agreement, but do you think, in your opinion, because it's being said at this time that this can potentially be a strategic shift in regional security? In your opinion, how does it do this as far as the shift itself is concerned?
I really would not call it a strategic shift because this kind of cooperation between Pakistan and Saudi Arabia has been there for a very long time. I believe since 1967, and Pakistani armed forces have been training uh, the security armed forces, the Saudi armed forces inside Saudi Arabia, as well as inside Pakistan, in our training institutions. And this has been going on. What has happened now is that relationship in security domain, and in particularly in the national security domain, has been reappraised, it has been reaffirmed, and it has been properly formalized. And that is mainly dictated by the prevailing environment, which is the geostrategic environment, and also the security environment in the region, particularly in the Middle East and in Asia. Pakistan and Saudi Arabia have no aggressive designs against any country of the world. And I think it should not, this pact should not raise any eyebrows.
Right, but in a sense, of course, this new security alignment also, it's also about the fact that both sides are now willing to extend themselves, beyond traditional alliances, Western security guarantees that we've seen in the past. So that itself is going to be, a huge boost for the region, no?
Yes, I think, as I said, there was a defense protocol between Pakistan and Saudi Arabia in 1984, where they were French sort of armed forces, and they were training them in Saudi Arabia on certain equipment, and there were even U.S. forces on that equipment. And actually, Saudi Arabia found it that they were extremely expensive, unaffordable for them, to keep them for that purpose. And therefore, I think deputation of Pakistani armed forces started there, and it continued for quite some time. There was an armored brigade group there, and I had, the privilege of being a part of that. And I think there is an excellent rapport between the armed forces of the two countries. Actually, it's a combination of the best armed forces of the world with the ample financial resources of Saudi Arabia. And therefore, I think this is a win win for both countries. It augurs very well for peace in the subcontinent, as well as peace in the Middle East. And I think it should be welcomed by everyone. When it goes to the ultimate mission, of this accord, I think it very clearly says that it is for the purpose of deterrence of aggression. And when you are talking of deterrence, you're essentially speaking of a defensive mode. But of course, if deterrence fails, and if aggression happens, or it is likely to happen, then that aggression has to be stopped. And I think both countries will defend themselves together, and it will be that defense is going to be in multi-domain operations. And I think that's the kind of cooperation that is able to effectively deter the enemies of Pakistan and Saudi Arabia, even though they may be different in some aspects.
General Sahab,
But
let me come back to you. On that note, let me come back to you. We also have with us Dr. Shabana Fayyaz, who's a security analyst. Thank you for joining us. Shabana, we're talking about, you heard General Sahab, and he's saying that, how its potential ramifications for both Pakistan and Saudi Arabia, but also particularly, when we talk about enhancing leverage, for example, for Pakistan, and we talk about economic and energy cooperation. So, of course, it's essentially about defense, but then it also envisages a very broad-based cooperation when you talk about, energy, or you talk about economic cooperation with the resources, like General Saab mentioned, the kind of resources that, of course, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia has at our disposal, with the kind of military might that we have. What do you envisage? In that sense, it's potentially huge, right?
Well, very well stated, you have said, and of course the respected General Saab has also clearly indicated. This is actually a pact, and a pact is normally not one issue related, if you look into the terminology. And when you say the strategic, it means broad-based. And we also should note that Saudi Arabia and Pakistan, before going for that, the Saudis have agreed to invest in Pakistan and be a part of the CPEC project. And that is also part of the, although it has not materialized at the moment, the oil drilling positions. And they are also concerned, they have mended their relations in a very good note with China. And with the Chinese going to Pakistan and stretching into the Middle East, so they have a very grand design of them quoting. And the Saudis, even being having a close relationship with the United States, has not been over the last decade or so being totally dependent on US. They want to diversify their sources of income. They want to diversify their defense outlook. They want to diversify their human potential. That is why they have been reaching out to many, even mending with the Iran, reaching out to India to a little bit, and also trying to change the society within. So that it becomes a more magnet for the, not only for the Muslim, but for the whole of the world. So having said this, I think the Pakistan can play a very good role, and we must not forget that the Saudis' relationship with Pakistan is one of the time-tested relationships. It has always stood by Pakistan, and Pakistan has always contributed to their defense needs. Most of the time, at time, it has not been made public because of our own reasons, but there are contribution in air defense, in the land enforcement and training of the Saudis have always been there. So, and this culmination of the pact is not a one day or a one tenure story. It has been going on, it started from at least a decade earlier. So, I think this is the maturing, but the more work has to be done in future.
Right, fair enough. Ambassador, there's also, when we look at what's happening between Pakistan and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, there's a lot that was earlier said with regard to us and, our neighbor as far as India is concerned. Of course, the reaction that we've seen come from India is quite vague at this time. They haven't said much. But do you think, of course, it refutes the assertions of isolation? A lot that was said when we talk about Operation Sindoor, or we talk about, post-Pahalgam, the saga that has unfolded. This alliance itself is inking the fact that, Pakistan is so much on the global scene. And the fact that, this alliance is now set to boost not just your military might, but also your economic might. So with a neighbor like India, how do you see it? How is it going to be looking at a Pakistan with all that behind it?
Well, as far as India is concerned, when I look at some of the Indian channels, they seem to be quite concerned. But then, generally they like to make things a little more spectacular than they really might be. But as far as the isolation of Pakistan is concerned, India has been trying this for many years now. And especially with the recent incident in Pahalgam, you may have noticed that in terms of diplomatic support, it was almost nil, whereas there were several countries that did express their support openly for Pakistan, China, Turkey and other countries. So that aspect of isolation already has not been very successful. Now let's come to the Middle East. These Gulf states realized that whatever so-called security umbrella they had is clearly not enough. And they will look elsewhere. And the other important part is that Saudi Arabia has not only led the GCC, but also leads the OIC. If you ever go to an OIC meeting, you will see how important the Saudis are over there. So this initial step, this alliance, I'm hoping will bring other, at least Gulf states on board. Now this is extremely important. So this is something which will bring other people on board. As far as the economy is concerned, not only will it help if they help us with the energy and other economic factors, but we have a nascent but very powerful defense production industry now.
Which, of course, they will give assistance in. They will.
If they would want to invest in it, then we can upgrade this whole thing.
Right. Let me come back to you on that. I'm going to include Shabana and then I'll come back to you. Shabana, there's also, of course, as far as Saudi Arabia is concerned, it also has a nuclear state behind it. So, the importance of that itself and, their upping the security game, so to speak, as far as Saudi Arabia is concerned. Because of course, like Nasir Sahab is saying, there is no doubt that they have, as far as their economic prowess is concerned, there is, we know that they will be of assistance. But what we are giving them also, on that scale is huge for them in terms of the strength it gives them in their defense, right?
Yes, but frankly, I must say that we should not be overblowing the fact that Pakistan and Saudi Arabia has turned out in a defense pact, and Pakistan is going to give a nuclear umbrella to the Saudi Arabia. I think if we stretch this to a common public, it may create a bit of something that is a huge, and it may be self-defeating at some point. This is something that needs to be discussed very thoroughly, and it may take few decades to do.
Of course,
but the exchange of energy, exchange of you can say the scientists and things like that are important. And in case of Pakistan, it is not only the nuclear that nuclear is the vital part. We also have the other defense capabilities that are much more capable of defending and standing with the friendly countries in the case of that. And secondly, we must also see, when we are talking about India, as you have said, mentioned very clearly, that India-Israel equation, we all know is very clear. Look into the Gaza-Israel issue, very much clear. They don't speak up. They don't speak for the Qatar even, or anybody, Iran or anybody. Now, Saudis-US equation, very close, but Saudis have stood against Israel, although prior to that they were in dialogue with other countries, opening up dialogue with Israel if they behave in a peaceful manner. So this is a very complex situation. The point I want to stress is that Pakistan, through this pact, has become a vital, very critical element in the strategic landscape of the Middle East.
I want to come to that also. Let me go to General Saab here. General Saab, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
General Saab, there's some, there are critics here also talking about, of course, this relationship between Saudi Arabia and the US. Do you think that's rather, it's not as relevant as it's being made, because of course that's independent of what's happened between Pakistan and Saudi Arabia? Do you think that balancing act is going to be an issue? Do you think that, of course, like you said, there has been mutual cooperation in the field of security between Pakistan and Saudi Arabia for a long time, and in that sense, this formalizes that. What is your take on this?
Well, I think there was a time, as I said earlier, that Pakistan, the United States and France, all of them were increasing the capacity of the Saudi armed forces. And I think the United States had no objections over that. And Saudi Arabia and the United States have very good relationships. And the United States considers Saudi Arabia as one major stabilizing force in the Middle East. And I think in that way, this accord will not be opposed by the United States or the other Western countries. When you come to, there was a discussion of extension of the nuclear umbrella. Let me say it very clearly that Saudi Arabia has, on a number of occasions, very clearly said that it has no desire of pursuing any nuclear weapons, although there is a non-declared nuclear weapon state, which is Israel, in its very close vicinity. Of course, it is interested, in enriching uranium for peaceful purposes, for the purpose of energy, and for the purpose of then selling that for export purposes. Again, for peaceful purposes. And I think that kind of help and assistance could be provided by Pakistan
But when we
to
talk
Saudi
about
Arabia.
this,
Uh,
Ji, when we talk about this assistance, we also, do you think that it's also giving Pakistan itself more leverage in the sense that, if we look at its possible increased influence, for example, with China, Russia, in that sense, this also gives us better posture. It emboldens us in the eyes of the world. That's a clear way of, that's the clear vision also of this pact. Do you agree with that?
yes, and I think even beyond that, I think that this is going to be a very stabilizing factor because Saudi Arabia has, I think, very good relations with India.
Yeah.
And now with this deal, I think India will have to think twice before it takes any aggression against Pakistan. And Saudi Arabia has the economic clout really to impress upon India that if it does any aggression against Pakistan, then it will be against its own national interest. Similarly, I think when it comes to relationship of Saudi Arabia and Iran, Pakistan could act as a bridge between the two, and that by itself is going to enhance the security of Pakistan, Iran, and Saudi Arabia, which again will be a stabilizing factor. In the Middle East itself, if Israel has any aggressive designs against Saudi Arabia, I think it will now back off from that. Uh, we are sure that while Israel may be harboring aggressive designs against Pakistan, but it has no capability whatsoever, to undertake those aggressive designs because we have seen what has happened to India. So overall, analysis is that it is a win-win, I think, for regional peace and security for Pakistan as well as for Saudi Arabia.
Right. Thank you so much, Ambassador. I know that you have limited time. Thank you for being with us. Now, sir, you heard what General Saab had to say about, India. But there's also this school of thought that is saying that it might influence India itself to sort of renew efforts with regard to defensive diplomatic ties with Gulf countries itself, and like reinforce ties between Saudi Arabia or the UAE. Do you see that also happening? Because of course we have a very, very acrimonious neighbor on the other side.
Not in the present scenario, because they have a very close security alliance with the Israelis.
Okay.
In fact, you must even have read that early on in the conflict, there were Indians that actually went to Israel and joined the IDF. But more than that, it is an axis that has, to some extent, common aims and common enemies. So in the present scenario, it would not.
Okay.
India has been playing this game of having an independent so-called foreign policy, where on the one hand they are part of Quad, and on the other hand they are also involved in the SCO. So what they are trying to do is keep all their options open. But in this conflict between India and Pakistan, there are clear signs of drones that were sent, Israeli drones were sent to Pakistan, and in some cases it is thought that even Israeli operators operating those drones. Not to mention that for years and years, they share intelligence along the border, satellite technology and things like that. So as far as India is concerned, but coming to Pakistan, the important thing is that Pakistan is not only perhaps the largest military in the Islamic world, but Pakistan has a battle-hardened force with a lot of experience, and they have served over there. The other important point is some people look towards similar alliances with, let's say, Turkey or with Iran or some such thing. There are Gulf nations that have often talked about it. Pakistan is the only country that, unlike, for example, Turkey, which from 1915 there was conflict between the Saudis, and there has always been a little bit of tension there between Turkey and Saudi Arabia. between Iran and Saudi Arabia on sectarian lines. Pakistan does not have those issues, so we share a religion and to some extent an ethnicity, and we don't come with that kind of...
So you think we can be a sort of facilitator in some cases?
Indeed, I would very much hope so, because you know, China made a very good effort and managed to bring Iran and Saudi Arabia together.
Right.
And Pakistan can be part of that effort to reinforce that. And I'm quite sure that the Saudis are also very keen, because this is a clear threat that is posed by Israel at this point.
Right, fair enough. We also have with us Umer Karim, who is a Saudi foreign policy expert. Thank you for joining us, Umer. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Umer, we're talking, of course, about this pact and, of course, its potential ramifications at this time. As far as other countries are concerned, of course, you know, we've discussed India and the fact that we really haven't seen much of, you know, they seem to be a little bit, what can one say, taciturn in terms of what they have to say. And as far as other countries are concerned at this time, how do you think that the world is looking at this pact? In terms of, you know, the kind of alliance that it can be between, of course, a nuclear power like Pakistan and, you know, an economic and military power like the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia?
I think the world has been, and India also, even if they don't say it, they have been shocked by this development because, you know, for the past 10 years, Pakistan and Saudi Arabia's relationship, they have been not as, you can say, they were good, they were cordial, they were warm, but there was no that special element within that relationship. And suddenly, a rabbit has come out of a magic hat. And this is how I see the European capitals, DC, and of course, New Delhi viewing it, because this has changed the regional security landscape overnight. Pakistan's nuclear umbrella, Pakistan's nuclear deterrence, and Pakistan's conventional military.
But Umer, of course, you know, like you are saying, in the sense that this isn't a symbolic signaling, it's much more. It's a game-changing military commitment, a military alignment for the future. Do you think in that sense, the modalities of this, the extent of it, you know, and of course the parameters of it are going to be determined perhaps as we go on in a lot of sense, right?
Absolutely. The modalities and parameters, they would be determined and would develop according to the circumstances and according to context. For instance, if this cooperation is meant to deter Israel, then Israel is not sending conventional weapons or boots on grounds. Israel is using very sophisticated weapon systems to target different countries across the Middle East. So Saudi Arabia and Pakistan would need to come up with that kind of a solution. But if there is another element which is meant to be deterred, then the modalities, then the parameters or the nitty-gritties, things on ground would be quite different. The real thing is that for the first time, the Saudis and the Pakistanis, they are in a practical alliance. I mean, even with the US, it was not really this sort of a written agreement. There were understandings, there were commitments, and because of the larger Saudi economic influence and its presence within the global energy markets, they had that leverage. But this is an event, a development, a progression which is beyond leverage. It is an actuality in terms of international relations, which is meant to change the balance of power within the Middle East, but also within South Asia.
Right, fair enough. I'm going to include Shabana in this also. Shabana, there's, you know, different reactions, and I would like to read this post on X by Michael Kugelman when he says that Pakistan has not only inked a new mutual defense pact, it inked it with a close ally that's also a top partner of India's. This pact would not deter India from attacking Pakistan, but with 3 key powers, China, Turkey and now the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia fully on Pakistan's side, Pakistan is in a very good place.
Yes.
In terms of giving us that kind of boost, I think that, you know, he's very aptly put it in terms of course, you know, this is also, one has to see post Pahalgam, where we've also demonstrated our military might, our capability and all of this. And now that this happens, do you think we should also be, you know, wary of a quick reaction coming from India as they watch this unfold for Pakistan?
Oh, well, if you have been reading what's been the you know, official statements from India, they said we are carefully looking into the pact and we'll come out with that. But as openly journalists and others, they are very concerned. They sound very concerned. So you are very right, and I know the Michael as well. You know, the writings, it clearly points out that Pakistan, I think the best one can draw from this pact is, for me, is the regional alliance building. The Pakistan has become a center stage. So the other part is, as a colleague from Saudi Arabia has pointed out, the context will vary, so does the actions. So this is very important. You are bringing in, Saudi Arabia has always been relevant in case of Pakistan security issues, but not much so in India-Pakistan situation. So in China, we all know, is a part Turkey has been supporting. So in other words, it says that if there are is a groupings of coming from different parts of the regions of the world, so the other enemies will have to think hard before going into the Pakistan.
Because you remember that, I mean, I'd like to include Nasir Sahab in this also, but I'm sure that both of you remember that we had the leader of opposition in India come out and talk in Parliament when he said that now it doesn't seem that we're only talking to Pakistan, but we are actually talking to, we are actually fighting an enemy with the might of China. And you know, after this, according to what Michael Kugelman has said, it seems to be not just China now. It's also Saudi Arabia. It's also, you know, we're also looking at, of course, the alliance that we have with Turkey. We are looking at China. We are looking at Saudi Arabia. So in that sense, we seem to have you know, gone up, so to speak, you know, as an aggressor. Like you said, they have to really, really think about engaging with Pakistan. Right,
you
Nasir?
see, one thing I want to point out is that China is not known for letting down its allies. There are many occasions when the other side has often done that. Either left them in the lurch after using them, or actually having a tacit understanding regarding a security umbrella. But then there are questions raised as to what exactly happened. To give you an example, in this particular attack on Qatar, apparently the aircraft from Israel flew along the Red Sea, above the Red Sea, but the missiles...
But right, I'm going to, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to interject here. Unfortunately, we're out of time, but you know, of course, we talked about as far as Pakistan and Kingdom of Saudi Arabia is concerned, what this pact can mean for the future, how it gives Pakistan, of course, an elevated status, not just as far as military is concerned, but also as far as economy is concerned. If we look at the kind of economic boost an alliance like this with Kingdom of Saudi Arabia means, of course, the potential of it is huge. And in terms of how this alliance will play out, of course, we'll know in the next couple of months. But as far as posturing is concerned, as far as our military might is concerned, as far as our nuclear power is concerned, that and the kind of cooperation that Pakistan and Kingdom of Saudi Arabia have the potential to achieve is huge. Thank you so much for being with us today on Views on News.